Okay, guys, what are some of the signs that your movement has gone mainstream? One good sign is when your movement starts mutating. You will know the movement is mutating when you start aligning with non-traditional partners. The last few weeks represents a realignment in the movement where we saw 10 liberals cross the aisle, vote against their party in support of school choice. I want to give a shout out to each one by name. In my own backyard, 3 liberals from Missouri, Representative Steve Butts from St. Louis, Representative Chantel Nixon Clark, Black female from St. Louis, and the star of the show was Representative Marlene Terry from St. Louis. The fact that she's a Black liberal and a former school board president speaks volumes. As she explained why she was supporting the Education Freedom Bill, she dedicated her vote to her grandson. Thanks for your courage, Marlene. Next up, Louisiana saw 6 liberals decide to make the difference for kids in their district. Stephen Jackson from Shreveport, a Black male. Marcus Bryant from New Iberia, a Black male. Travis Johnson from Vidalia, a Black male. Larry Selders from Baton Rouge, a Black male. Joy Walters from Shreveport, a Black female. And everybody's favorite representative, Jason Hughes, also a Black male. Jason's speech on the Louisiana House floor went viral when he declared that he didn't need his $16,800 a year job bad enough to watch our children continue to live in poverty, trapped in failing schools, and not try to do something. Bravo, Jason, bravo. Now, let's head up to Nebraska. This time we have a Black male state senator, Justin Wayne. He hit the ball over the net with a challenge to his fellow liberals. Before he cast his vote, understanding that his vote would be the deciding vote, he said that he was willing to kill the bill. He would kill the bill on one condition: if his fellow Democrats would be willing to enroll their kids in the local government schools. When he didn't get any takers, he voted for education freedom. Remember, social movements have 7 ingredients, and one of them is powerful messaging. There's a powerful testimony behind each one of those crossover votes. So what's the takeaway, guys? The takeaway is that for every 10 representatives that were willing to go on the record in support of school choice, there were probably another 10 who were afraid to make the leap. It's the job of school choice advocates to find the other 10. I personally believe that 90% of Americans support school choice. They just don't know it yet. Okay, so today I'm going to sit down with a non-traditional ally. She saw how the lack of financial literacy was negatively impacting the Black entrepreneurial community. She developed a curriculum to bridge the gap, and after training 250 adult entrepreneurs, she's decided to add a mastermind camp for the kids. Let's get into it. What's up, activists? It's about to get interesting. Today in the studio, we have Dr. Donnetta Watson. The last name is not a coincidence. She is my aunt and the founder of the Black Mastermind Group. She's got a lot to share, so let's get going. What's up, Auntie? Welcome to School's Out.
I'm so proud of you and so excited about what you're doing, and thank you for having me here today.
Well, thank you for coming. You have a lot of information that we need to know. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your background.
Okay.
And how that background brought you to what you're doing right now. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing with the Black Mastermind Group.
Well, I am a 38-year entrepreneur and started entrepreneurship at a very early age. I've been every type of entrepreneur there is: a mompreneur, a dualpreneur, a part-timepreneur, and now a full-time entrepreneur. I was a very creative child, had a lot of creative gifts, and my very first entrepreneurial endeavor was in the 3rd grade. I made aprons and pot holders for my teachers, And they bought them and talked about how amazing they were. And it really felt good coming from being a child growing up in the projects, single mother with 6 kids, divorcee, and barely keeping a roof over our head. And it felt good to make my own money. And I think that was the starting point that I realized my creative gifts and talents and abilities were something people would pay for. Later in life, I taught myself how to be a florist, read books, watched programs on television, and taught myself how to create floral arrangements and do designs, and became an interior decorator, event designer. And from being at church, watching other people do their weddings, at one service, someone said, we don't know what to do. Does anyone know what to do? And I said, well, I've been watching enough of them, and raised my hand. And from that point on, I became the wedding planner for the church. And I really took that gift serious. I knew it was from God. It was something He had blessed me with, to be that creative. And I began to just do a lot of projects around the church and help out where I could. And it evolved into a full-fledged business of wedding and event planning services, event design services, and it just evolved. On my pathway from being a young mother to going back to school and getting my education, going back and getting a master's degree, and found myself as a management statistician for the federal government. Still did my weddings and events, evening and weekends. But let me back up, because before I became a management statistician for the government, I started my first, what I call real business, and it was called Handmaidens. And it was back in the early 90s, and there were a lot of other creative individuals I had met on my journey. And I began to market their products for them on a similar concept of the house party, home interior, House of Lloyd type of concept. And it became extremely successful for everyone else, but not me. The business grew so fast, so quick, that the expenses became so large of a responsibility for me that it was overwhelming to have that much hitting me financially. And I decided to close the business. It was a partnership, which was my first learning process of what a partnership is and what it is not, and how it should be structured and how it should not. But I walked away with all the debt from that endeavor. But it was a really good induction into business. And I was bitten from that point on.
So a lot of what you learned, it seems like you learned it just by trial and error.
Well, some parts of it, the actual running a business through trial and error, but then I went back to business school. And in 2008, I went to Joseph Business School, a faith-based, fully accredited business school from Chicago, Illinois. And when I was in the school, all the things that I had done and all the things I had tried, when you're a gifted and talented person, you try a lot of things. And what's amazing to other people is you're really good at everything. But I didn't know who I was. And so I had gone through that whole phase of anything I put my hands to, God prospered it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of dangerous sometimes, because we don't really develop what gifts He wants to use when we have so many gifts and so many talents and can do so many things. And I went through a season, I just wanted to know who I was and what He called me to do. So that's why it led me to Joseph Business School, because I really wanted to make sure I was in the perfect will of God for the rest of my life. I didn't want to keep trying things, can sing, can cook, can dance, can draw, can sew, can do anything. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to know who I was and what I was called to do, and why God allowed me to be conceived in my mother's womb. What was the purpose and the assignment? And in Joseph Business School, it was really a time of confirmation that God has indeed called me to be an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurship is a calling. It's what God needs in the earth realm, and He raises up people and gives them ideas, witty ideas that will impact the community. So entrepreneurship took a totally different spin for me, because it was never about just making money. It was about expressing the gifts and talents and abilities God had put inside of me. Money is just a byproduct of being used and allowing those gifts and talents to be used. And that sealed it for me. I was working as a supervisory statistician for the federal government, quality assurance analysis, but I knew I was an entrepreneur. And it became the job that would fund my future. And I wore it very loosely because of that.
Well, part of the transparency that I bring to the show is that I had gone into complete unbelief. We've talked about this before, and I had become an atheist, and I was everything, believing all of the lies in the world. And the people that follow and support Herzog, they do so because they support Christian education. We know that biblical principles are the foundation for financial literacy and entrepreneurial success.
Yes.
So how do the Christian principles intersect with what you're doing with Black Mastermind?
First of all, it was God that gave me the idea, and he gave me the name. And at the time when I named it Black Mastermind, it wasn't very comfortable because people thought it was causing disruption to name it Black Mastermind. But as I've studied the plight of the Black community, and I studied the fact that we are extremely creative people, but not having knowledge about who we are and what we've been created to do, how much abuse of our own self is happening because of lack of understanding. We are who we are because God allowed us to be born. We have a purpose and a reason that God allowed us to be conceived. Everything we do is to really bring clarity to who God called us to be, and not to take society's definition of who we are and our worth and value. I believe God is saying something, not just to the church today, but he's saying something to his people. And the message is very loud and clear that we are so off center from understanding God's plan for humanity.
So this is one of the things that you've been bringing to the table a lot, is this connecting the dots.
Yes.
So when I started the show, I said that that's one of my goals. I want to connect the dots between the church. For me, it's the fact that 90% of the churches sit empty 90% of the time, that connects the dots to what happened to me and me becoming an unbeliever. And then sitting in your class, it connected more dots with what's going on in the entrepreneurial community,
Yes.
the fact that the church, again, is sitting idle.
Yes.
So you spend a lot of times connecting biblical principles to entrepreneurial principles.
Absolutely.
So where did you get that?
I think that I gave my heart to Christ when I was 19 years old. I've been a student of the word ever since. I've always been that person to raise my hand and ask the hard questions. Something's missing on this journey. Something's missing. We're not doing a very good job of evangelizing the real world. And so we, in the body of Christ, we tend to think that, and in the era that I came up, so being the age that I am, women could not do the things I do today. You know, I was called unsubmissive. I was called everything imaginable because I had a calling for business. And it wasn't okay back then in the 70s and the 80s for women back in the 70s to have that passion for business. And I wanted to be in the room where everything was being talked about was business. But the church didn't understand the calling that was on my life and saw it as me being out of position or out of place or unsubmissive. I wanted to have a job. I wanted to work. I wanted to have my own money. I wanted to experience doing things. I've always been a person who was extremely intelligent, but nothing was challenging my intelligence. So I was always trying to find a place where I fit in because I wasn't that traditional homemaker wife that baked cakes and pies and smiled all the time. That wasn't who I was. And so I was somewhat called rebellious because I felt like there was something missing in all of us because we had so created a whole community of people that came to church and sat.
So we're not activating, we're not walking out
No,
the principles.
Absolutely.
We're not walking out.
I don't see that happening in the communities that we're from, that people's gifts and talents and abilities, God-given talents, gifts and abilities, have not been allowed to be expressed in a way that it creates a life living for people. I'm disappointed how we have put an emphasis on spiritual gifts and not an equal emphasis on the natural gifts that God gives that creates opportunities, that provides a lifestyle.
Okay, so let's tie this down to like sort of the calling that Herzog has and the calling that I have and the calling you have with your training, and the disconnect with, like, there's literally a lack of basic literacy.
Yes.
And then you are tying that to the lack of financial literacy. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I spend all my time talking about, ABC literacy. Then I take your course, and now I have a background in the financial realm, but I'm sitting in your course, and there's many concepts you're reviewing that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
So we have to, go from A to Z. And where we are right now with not even having the ABC literacy, and you are trying to get people to understand these high-level concepts in the business world, how are we going to connect?
Yeah. I believe that when people know who they are, and it says, the children that know their God shall be strong and do great exploits. And the thing that's missing is people don't know who they are, and they don't know their God. And entrepreneurship, the way I teach it is the way God taught it to me.
Is the church teaching any of this?
No. Well, I can tell you who we are in Christ and what God has given us and the gifts and talents to bring to the marketplace. Dr. Bill Winston was my mentor, my teacher. Joseph Business School is a faith-based, absolutely amazing program that gets us to understand God's kingdom principles of wealth. And the reason he raises us up is because we are assigned to address something in the earth realm through our business and through the wealth that we create to impact the lives of people. I grew up and went to all these colleges and got all this education, and not once did anyone tell me on my journey I had a responsibility to come back and impact my community. And when I heard that, it all made sense that that's what God's trying to do with all of us. Raise us up and get us in a position that we can impact the community. So it's important for people to understand what the whole purpose and plan, the reason that they are existing in the earth realm. They have an assignment. They have something that God has asked of them to do that brought them into the earth realm in the first place. He knew us before we were conceived in our mother's womb. We were in some form, some state in his presence. We are here because there's something he wants done. Once we turn that switch on, I can then build the building blocks to your gifts, your talents is for the marketplace. You're a Christian, you're called by God, but it is to go to the marketplace. And while you're in the marketplace, you're supposed to bring resources back. We have a responsibility to fund what God has called to happen in the earth realm. That's what entrepreneurship was designed to do. I call it the last dispensation. We've seen the dispensation of faith, healing, word of God, deliverance movements, and now he said, do business until I return. Occupy.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship.
So we're supposed to do business. You found the Black Mastermind Boot Camp. What does the boot camp do?
Teaches business. Teaches a community of people who, first of all, don't believe that they have anything of value within them, that you have value. And your gifts and talents have they're needed in the marketplace. The product or service you bring to the marketplace is so necessary, but the lives you're supposed to impact through the business is even more necessary. And so we teach entrepreneurship from a spiritual principle of our calling and our assignment. And now that you have this business, you've got to run it in excellence. And who is the King of excellence? It's our God. And everything we do must bring honor to him. And that's through our business. And we teach the fundamentals of business, but from a financial perspective. I'm a previous statistician. I'm a numbers girl. Yeah. I eat, sleep, drink, breathe.
She does. She does, you guys.
Dream numbers.
So I did take the boot camp, and she had nicknamed it an MBA in 8 weeks, and she was really serious about that. So I do want to drop some amazing news right now. that the Lord did show up for Black Mastermind Group. He gave you a down payment on this goal you have of raising $20 million for entrepreneur training. Tell us what happened. What's your down payment?
Well, I want to tell the story, but and so my previous business, and I lost so much money. I saved so much money on my journey, and I lost it in 4 years through a lot of situations, circumstances that led me to believe that it wasn't an accident. God was going to use it. And so he told me that when we catch the thief, he owes a sevenfold return, and that I needed to calculate what was owed to me. And at that time, it came to $3.125 million that was owed to me because of the situations and circumstances that happened. And so I put a command in the spirit realm. I just stood in faith that that was what was going to come into my hands. But I didn't put a date on it. And the principles of success require you to, first of all, know how much money you desire. Number 2, know what you're going to give in product or service for the money. Number 3, have a date on it. Number 4, write a plan. Number 5, rehearse that plan. And number 6, do it every day. And we say 3 times or more a day. And when I put a date on it, it's as if it jumped off the pages that all of this faith that I have, I had not given God a time frame to work within. And so I put a date on it. And that date is next Friday, my 65th birthday. I put a date on when I was standing in faith, see God do something that the Word of God said we can stand and believe Him to do. And within months of putting a date on it, I got an application to apply for a grant. And I applied. And it was a tedious undertaking applying for that grant. And in the middle of teaching class, March of 2022, make sure that date's right, March of 2023, I think it's 2023, got an email that we were awarded $1.4 million from the Kansas Department of Commerce for creating an entrepreneurial training facility, incubator, and technology facility. And we were currently tenants in the strip mall, and we had about 3,000 square feet of the facility that we were running as our office, and was really looking to expand so that we can help more entrepreneurs really launch businesses correctly. My nickname is the launch strategist, because launching businesses have to be really strategized and laid out into a process, and we don't follow the prescription when we open our businesses. And so I wanted to help businesses get started. But on this journey, I realized there's so much more that's needed just than helping them get started. I need to teach them how to run a business and run it from a financial perspective, running it by the numbers. And that grant opened up for us to buy the complex that we are in. It's a 25,000 square foot strip mall that we are converting 9,000 square feet of the facility for an incubation program. 3,000 square feet will be the training business and technology center, because the next dispensation of business will be strictly technological, and we must create a community that understands technology.
Exactly. But we're not going to be able to do that without the ABCs.
Absolutely.
So you guys, we are at a segment in the show that I call School Choice in the News. So how it works is I'm going to show you a video clip that reflects on the state of school choice and the movement. For the audience that may be listening and not watching, let me set up the clip. First, I'm going to confess that I clicked on this video because I was shocked by the heading. Mm-hmm. The title of the video is Black Children's Reading in 2023 is Worse Than During Slavery.
Absolutely.
And I was taken aback, and so that's the what you guys are going to hear. So let's play that clip, and then I'll get your feedback.
Friends, colleagues, viewers, we have a major problem in the United States of America. Our children are not reading, you all. They're not reading, and it's killing me. I'll be 52 years old this year. My name's Kaleem Care, founder and CEO of One City Schools here in Madison, Wisconsin. I've done a lot nationally. This is crazy. And I'm trying to figure out how to get politicians' attention, how to get the Black community up out their chairs to make this a bigger issue. Years ago, education was a huge thing for our community. Now, doesn't seem like it is. Honestly, I don't know what is, to be honest with you. But it's frustrating. Last year, 2022, the National Assessment of Educational Progress showed that nationwide only 32% of America's fourth graders were reading at grade level. That means they were actually literate at the fourth grade level, which means they are actually able to read to learn effectively at the fourth grade level. It's crazy. Only 32% of our kids. In Wisconsin, when you look at our state assessment, only 35% of children in the third grade who completed third grade, this test was given in April of 2022, March, April, only 35% were reading proficiently, meaning they were capable of reading to learn at the third grade level. And at the end of third grade in American education, we switched from teaching children how to read, kindergarten through third grade, to teaching them, to read to learn. So kids have to have some foundational skills by the time they finish third grade. What it showed was that literally 65% of our kids in Wisconsin, third graders overall, aren't cutting it. Worse, only 8% of black children in Wisconsin are reading at grade level. Only 8% of third graders. That's crazy. When you look fast forward to high school, only 8% of the students that are in high school who complete the ACT in Wisconsin, because the majority of our kids are supposed to complete that, only 8% are considered proficient on the ACT, which by their standards means that a child has, I think it's 75% chance or better of getting a C or better on their entry-level language arts classes, English language arts classes in college. Only 8%. So that means 92% across the pipeline can barely read, y'all. And most of them, when you look at the data, can barely read at all. That's happening right now.
So what do you think? What do you think of the clip?
Well, I've often said with what I have been experiencing in the classroom, the lack of ability to read in our adult community is an indictment on the public school system. I've been shocked to see how many adults cannot properly read, cannot sound out words. And I remember when phonics were removed from the school system, and I was appalled because my middle daughter was struggling with reading. And when I found out they had removed phonics from the reading books, I'm like, well, how in the world are you going to teach kids to read? So I had to teach her to read myself, because that was during that period of time when they're experimenting. And that was in the early mid-'80s where they decided to remove phonics. And she was a product of that. And I had to teach her how to read and teach her from phonics. And I'm like, because all my children are going to read. And so I've always been that person that wanted my children to excel. I took it upon myself to work with my child to make sure she could read. And so it was devastating for me to see we are in the 2020s and all of these adults can't read and they don't know how to sound out words. And I'm shocked.
I'm shocked. I meet people. I've been doing research. I was told that this area was my calling. My mission field is the church, to try and impress upon them the need for them to start micro schools, to stop relying on others to do what God has put in the hands of the pastor. So this guy, his numbers are that literacy rates after slavery, that would have been 1865, maybe the 1870 census, 10% literacy. But in his district, he's got an 8% literacy rate. So more than 150 years after slavery, we're going backwards. So with you trying to teach high-level entrepreneur concepts, how does that impact what you're trying to do?
It does impact it. And we intentionally require our students to read out loud, so that reading is so important to the fundamentals of math. And if you cannot sound out, figure out what's on the page in the reading process, you won't be able to look at numbers and interpret what the numbers are saying. It's all tied together to you being able to have the capacity to figure out what you're looking at and what you're seeing in print. And we see adults struggling, and it breaks my heart, but I really have to point my finger back at the educational system. We have failed predominantly the Black community. And the reason is because there's a mindset that we're incapable of functioning at that level. And so the effort to ensure proficiency hasn't been there. That's the whole problem.
Right. And one of the things that I'm trying to, tie up in a bow for the Black community in particular, for the Christian community in general, and then the subset of the Christian community that is the Black community, is that we have all this infrastructure. We have the capacity to do this for ourselves, but we want to keep relying on the government to do something that I don't believe was ever put into their hands.
I think the church is relying upon the government to do a lot of things that God did not ordain the government to be involved in. And when the church becomes the church again, then the government can take its rightful place where it should be. But it's in places that we have usurped our responsibility to the community that we've been called to be in. If we have all of these churches on the corners across America, the church is to serve the community. And we've lost the whole concept of impacting the community from which we exist and operate. And that's why we are in the urban core of Kansas City, Kansas, because I realize the gift that God has given me is to impact my community, and I've got to go into the community to really impact it. There's churches all around me.
Exactly.
Walking distance around me.
They are.
That I've tried to partner with so we can impact more people in the urban core. But I don't believe the church has a focus today on souls for when I came up. It was 1977 when I got saved. And we were on the street corners witnessing. We were walking up and down Minnesota Avenue and Quindale Boulevard and 18th Street, the places people were scared to go. And we were sharing Christ. That's not the church today. That's not the majority of the church today. We've lost our passion for souls, and we've lost our passion for people, which is the reason God allowed us to remain in the earth realm so that we can return lost souls to Him. We've seemed to have lost the commission, and the mission that comes with the commission is to get into the community where the people exist and to impact their very lives, but for Christ. I don't shy away at all through my program of reminding people that you are here because God sent you here. You are here. The very reason you are allowed to breathe the breath of life is because you have an assignment you haven't fulfilled. If we can't bring that awareness back to people that you're not here existing on your own, you're here because God allowed you to be here, and there's a reason for you to be here. When we can bring that reason you exist back to people's minds, it brings a whole different dimension of responsibility.
So one of the ways that you do that is you have a conference coming up. You have it twice a year.
Yes.
This was your big conference coming up, the summit. So tell us when, where this conference is going to be. I have some.
The Summit of the Black Masterminds is an opportunity for individuals who really are committed to working in the communities across America, impacting Black people, to raise their lives up to a whole new standard of existence. And this is the time that we also graduate our students that have worked hard and really made that commitment to be an entrepreneur that runs a business through these principles we teach. And that conference is a huge indicator of, just what we're doing in our city, that we want it to catch fire in every city across America. The conference is June 14th, 15th, and 16th. One of my mentors, Dr. George C. Frazier, who is an amazing man who has a real good grasp of what's happening on the economic side of the Black community. And he will be our keynote speaker on Saturday, the 15th, and then Sunday, the 16th, which is Father's Day, we graduate our students. And I went, all of my college graduations was on Mother's Day. So fathers, you need to be there to support your children. And so it's on Father's Day every year. We do it every June and every December. It is launching what we are praying to see happen in the community, entrepreneurs into sustainable business models that can create opportunities, which we call JOBs, or opportunities for other people in the community, and become sustainable by providing a quality product or service in the urban core.
Okay, so I want to drill down a little bit before we wrap up about Dr. Frazier, because I wasn't familiar with him until you introduced me to him. Then I started consuming his videos and, being blown away by the level of economic understanding that this man has. So Dr. Frazier, when I looked him up, he's a former executive with Procter & Gamble, United Way, Ford Motor Company, and he's written several best-selling books. He will be the speaker. That's the day before Father's Day. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for people to bring people out to hear him so they can absorb what he does, who he is. And if somebody was interested in going to the event, what do they need to do?
Go to our website, theblackmastermindgroup.com, and click on the conference tab, and you'll see all the activities. It is a 3-day event. A lot of activities that are designed to really speak to entrepreneurs and to enlighten them on their responsibility to their community and what that responsibility looks like, how we have to show up in entrepreneurship, and the impact we can make through our businesses.
Okay, so we're actually out of time for this episode, but thank you for digging into the issues surrounding financial literacy in general and how it's impacting the Black community in particular. If anyone is listening that wants to get in contact, go to theblackmastermindgroup.com. If you're interested in sponsoring some of the programming, attending the boot camp, or attending the upcoming summit, all the information is on the website.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so thank you for coming. This is an area that I was frankly missing until I enrolled in your course.
And how long did it take for you to finally enroll?
Well, you made me do it when I came to your office. So I do want to mention the name because she came up with this unique name for the plan that she's executing, and it's the Urban Prosperity Plan.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn anything about the Urban Prosperity Plan, go to her website. We're going to post all of the information with the video. And you guys, that's a wrap for this week. Keep meditating on what role you can play in building out the school choice movement, because the fate of America will not be determined in the White House. It will be determined in the schoolhouse. If you want to learn more about how we're going to defeat the woke mind virus via the school choice movement, I regularly post new content, so don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.